welcome everyone to this first of the parallel sessions. We have three, I suppose we could say, speakers, as was just explained. Each speaker has recorded a video, pre-recorded, which I will play shortly. What I suggest is that, so if everyone keeps their microphone muted during this session to start with, if you have questions as the videos are playing, please post those into the chat. I will then, and that will give the opportunity for the three speakers to pick up on those questions, and I'll kind of facilitate that after the 20 minutes of video, and then there'll be opportunity for those questions to be answered. And if we have time, once we've got through those questions, we will have an opportunity to take further questions from participants. So for most of it, if you could keep your microphones off, please. Right, so hopefully you can see at the moment, we've just got a single PowerPoint slide. We've got three speakers. The first presentation, or the first video, will be from Xiaoyun Liu from Taiwan, looking at alternative futures for green spaces. Our second speaker is Michaela Campagna from Calgary, who will be talking about strategic planning in the Cagliari metro area in Sardinia. And our final speaker is Mariana Sigalo-Klein from Israel, who's talking about alternative futures for Talpiot.
Hi, my name is Xiaoyun Liu from National Sun Yat-sen University in Taiwan. I would like to make a presentation about alternative futures for green spaces. The amazing landscape you can see from the cover page is our study site, the city of Talpiot. Talpiot is located about 40 kilometers southwest of Taipei Metropolitan, the capital city, and its population is increasing. Because of its geographic location, it is easy to commute between Talpiot and Taipei using a highway, high-speed rail, and railroad system. In 2020, the population of Talpiot was about 2.2 million. Like many other urban sprawl processes, demand for new development changes the natural landscape and cut green infrastructure. The Talpiot Plateau has many irrigation ponds, which earned Talpiot the nickname Thousand Pond Township. The spectacular cliff skyline, the irrigation pond network, and various types of landscape are key elements that the city of Talpiot wants to preserve. We define development types based on characteristics of population growth over the past 10 years. And all the scenarios for the future land demand are related to the various types. The project actually combines two ways of thinking in terms of green spaces, both top-down and bottom-up. The Alternative Futures for Green Spaces project set up the geodesign framework to protect the green infrastructure through increased green coverage, reduce the sprawl, and industry upgrade. The Page by Planting project seeks potential green coverage improvement through geospatial analysis based on open data and citizen participation. Physical workshops were held to join these two projects together and rethink the possibilities for green spaces. During the geodesign workshop, critical innovations were discussed, including a whole-day discussion on criteria for simulation. Participants in the workshop included the City of Talpiot, NGOs, universities, and consulting firms. Major criteria were debated and finalized into several systems. For instance, the increased percentage in green coverage, compact and smart communities, critical landscape protection such as the view corridor to the cliff line, the irrigation pond network, and the historical landscape were all criteria selected as part of the early adopter scenario. Because of the COVID situation, we will have one more workshop virtually to discuss the final impact model. Hopefully, it can be conducted this July. In the early adopter scenario, new development is required to fill in the existing urban context first. The development is only allowed along and near transportation corridors to reduce the sprawl. Goals include protecting the critical landscape first, such as wetlands, the cliff line, and irrigation pond network, and increasing green coverage by 5%. In the late adopter scenario, Development sprawls along the traffic and existing urban corridor. Some areas of development block views of the cliff and disconnect the green infrastructure. In this scenario, the 5% increase in green coverage along the critical view corridor and key protected area is not realized until after 2035. In the non-adopted scenario, new development not only sprawls but also changes the landscape of the irrigation pump network, which is the key green infrastructure in Taoyuan. Views to the cliff landscape are blocked, and agricultural lands are transferred to development. Because green infrastructure strategies are key elements in this project, its impact on sustainable development goals is significant. In addition to the 5% increase in green coverage, consideration should be given to the selection of tree locations and other factors of critical landscape, conservation, and connection. These measures will increase the sustainability of all biosphere, social, and economic goals. Because green infrastructure is a critical factor in the early adapted scenario, the green coverage increase will be designed to contribute to the Trillion Trees Initiative. On a national scale, the number of trees planted will be relatively low because of the high population projected for 2035. The Geodesign project is also collaboration with the Patch by Planting project, which is an award-winning project from the Presidential Hackathon. The goal of this project is to identify potential spots for trees and facilitate following up actions, such as public participation or business donations, to increase project implementation. The project is a joint effort of government, academics, NGOs, private enterprise, and consulting firms. It is a demonstration of the spirit of negotiation and collaboration in the geodesign process. To keep development sustainable, it is important to identify critical innovation systems and factors. We think in many rapid development cities, increased green coverage, conservation of key landscape areas, and compact development are major strategies to increase sustainability. The city of Taoyuan is a beautiful place. Hopefully, we will be able to invite you to visit physically in the near future. That brings me to the end of my presentation. Thanks for your attention.
Hello, everyone. This is Michaela Campagna from the University of Cagliari in Cagliari, Sardinia, Italy. And today I'm presenting the latest geodesign study that I coordinated in the area where I live, basically. This case study actually has a long history. Looking back at 2016, we conducted the first Geodesign Workshop in collaboration with Professor Karl Steinitz, which at that time was visiting our university. And we set up a first research workshop using Geodesign Hub. And with a traditional approach at that time that was mainstream, basically using the stakeholders approach, basically setting up a group of stakeholders with different interests and objectives, negotiating for a final design. We created a set of evaluation maps for 10 systems. Then we involved about 30 participants to the collection of a proposal of diagrams representing policy and projects. And then the stakeholder group developed their own development scenarios. And then through negotiation, they came to a final agreement with a final scenario. Later on, the same case study actually was conducted in the first edition of the IGC back in 2018. And we used the case study this time in teaching settings following the earlier IGC standard. And this study was published eventually in the first IGC publication, so it's well documented. You can find more information there. Now, last spring, I had the opportunity to work with a metropolitan authority in Cagliari and they agreed to use this methodology and to test in a real planning process, that is the strategic plan making for the metropolitan city of Cagliari. So within the broader process, the Geodesign Workshops was used basically to involve the 17 municipalities and basically to have them collaborating in design and offering a bottom-up input for the final decision, which will be taken very soon by the Metropolitan Council. We develop a new set, in this case, of evaluation maps, and which were customized, taking into account the objective of the strategic agenda, which was already adopted in the process by the Metropolitan Council. We collected by the municipality, with a bottom-up approach, more than 250 projects and policies. And we realized we didn't use, basically, we didn't require to use a system innovation to the participant, but at the same time, looking at the result of the workshop, we could identify clearly a wide use of system innovation. You can see a list here in the slide referring to the various IGC systems. In the second phase of the workshop, which, by the way, lasts around 15 hours in 5 sessions along 2 weeks, the municipalities were grouped by location in local groups, and they started to develop their own synthesis with the usual several iterations, starting from local and going to global. So they started using the local perspective, which is very strong because the municipalities usually, this is their job, what they usually do, but then started to learn how to integrate their own proposals within the wider metropolitan area, and to find synergies, cooperation with other municipalities, and to create a synergic overall design. Eventually, the negotiation basically was oriented to identify priorities. The project and policy with priority 1 basically represent the bone of the project, of the strategic plan, and with a major infrastructure. We found in this skeleton green infrastructure, transport infrastructure, cultural heritage as well. With the project and policies with priority 2, basically the main skeleton was integrated with secondary infrastructure, and then with the project and policy with priority 3 and 4, the skeleton was implemented locally with a flash and basically with other projects that could make all the system work. To conclude, this experience was extremely successful, I believe. And first of all, the participants were extremely happy about the methodology approach they used, they tested for the first time. It was the first time they have the chance to collaborate all together in a co-design approach, and they had the opportunities to have their voice heard by the higher level of decision making. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to present before you Talpiot 2021 Israel project, Alternative Future for Talpiot Area, Rethinking Growth for 2040. Here we are talking about 2 adjacent neighborhoods in Jerusalem, Israel, Talpiot Arnona and Talpiot Mizrach. They are very close to the heart of Israel, to the heart of Jerusalem. While one neighborhood, historical neighborhood in Talpiot Arnona, the other one is a modern close neighborhood, Talpiot Mizrach. This project tests implementation process in heliotopography, in difficult planning. Here we can see the requirements: increasing population by 60% by 2040, adding 9,500 new dwellings by using lower and higher density housing to 7,700 existing dwellings. So we expect by 2040, 17,200 dwellings. Shape new growth using mixed use along the light train from 4 to 30 floor buildings, adding commercial uses as part of mixed use, develop pedestrian-friendly centers and streets, preserving cultural, historic buildings and heritage sites, increasing number of employees, increasing area of public buildings and institutions in the walkable locations, develop a park system and outdoor spaces, connecting areas in neighborhoods by greening spaces, formulating an active mass transportation master plan for the area, applies sustainable technology for energy and water, using renewable energy sources and energy storage. In innovations, we have water, agriculture, green infrastructure, energy, transportation, institutions, lower density housing, mixed density housing, mixed and high density housing, cultural heritage, and tourism. Here we are talking about 4 interest groups: community, development, government, and environment. We think that 4 those interest groups are crucial for implementation process, and we see them responsible to see the implementation till the end. You can see the changes in the design in each and every group, and we can compare decision-making models. The method description includes Zoom technology during a period of 12 hours, split between 3-day sessions due to the coronavirus pandemic. The project was accomplished by the negotiation between 4 group interests during 2 sessions. The Geodesign Workshop was held by the Geodesign Hub with the help of Rishi Balal as a main instructor, together with Renat Stilnoff-Milo, Mariana Sigal of Klein, me, and Miri Reyes, under supervision of Dr. Architect Shlomit Flint. All of the above, we are planning professionals, Miri Reyes and me, Mariana Sigal of Klein, in the Jerusalem municipality, Renat Stilnoff-Milo in the Tel Aviv municipality. And we are also students for a doctorate under the instruction of Dr. Shlomit Flint in the Bar-Ilan University. The main difficulty was the commitment of the professionals with the difficult schedule and the difficult time. But as you can see, we finalized the process. Here we can see the 2 neighborhoods and what's going on with the planning process. We can see in red the ongoing plans. Those plans will take many years to implement. And we can see the building permits that has already been finalized. Most of them are under the construction already. So there are being 5% out of all the dwellings that has been promoted here. So a total of 4,272 new dwellings being promoted out of 9,500 new dwellings is planned in both master plans. This is important because in Talpiot Arnona, the master plan has already been finalized, and in Talpiot Mizrach, not yet. So it's important, all this process. So we continue to promote little plans without finalizing the master plan policy. Here we can see the evaluation plans for green infrastructure, transportation, institutions, lower density housing, mixed evaluation, and combination evaluation. Here we can see the explanation of project participants, funding sources, the Geodesign Strategy Lab in the Bar-Ilan University by BIU, and the Jerusalem municipality, the sources of data of both master plans, the GIS system of Jerusalem municipality, and urban data, Jerusalem municipality, and the guide of allocation of public purpose land uses. And key software that has been used were Geodesign Hub. The important features in negotiated plan were mixed use with high density housing, commercial facades and public buildings along the future light train lines, walkable solutions in topographic slope, walking, cycling, mechanic facilities, energy, agriculture and water infrastructure policies. So I'm Mariana Sigal of Klein. This project has been done by the supervision of Dr. Architect Shlomit Flint, Bar-Ilan University in Jerusalem Municipality. Thank you very much.
Okay, right, thank you for those three interesting presentations. This is slightly different to how we would normally maybe experience things, where we'd get the person actually kind of presenting live, but I thought that was a really good way of doing that. So we've actually had quite a lot of questions in the chat. So I will start, let me just scroll back up. So we'll take them in order, if I can just get that. Yeah, so I will read the questions out. Maybe if there's any follow-up from the specific people who asked the question, we'll do that. Michaela, when it gets to yours, I guess you're on top of reading through yours. You can maybe go through those in orders, and then we'll finish off with Michelle. So Shion, Brian has asked, 5% seems a modest target for the green coverage. What do you think might be the upper limit of that figure for a densely populated country like Taiwan?
Yeah, I think 5% is not the aggressive number of increasing green coverage, but actually it is very interesting that during the Geodesign workshop, the number of 5% was brought out from the government, from the local government, the city of Taoyuan. So I think the number can be embedded into the local government from their urban design policy and the building regulation. So we begin with this number. And because this is still an ongoing project, and we will have more workshops, probably 1 or 2 workshops to work with the city government. So we think the 5% is the minimum or the safe number from now. But even this number, we can see the outcome for carbon footprint, for the values to increase the green coverage. So I think Brian has another question related to this one. So we think if the minimum number we can achieve, and then we can have more number to discuss with the city government.
Okay, thank you. I think what we might do is we'll go through the specific questions, then we can come back and open the floor, maybe cover some kind of cross-cutting issues. Sure. So Michaela, you've got quite a few questions ranging from, did you run your Geodesign workshops fully online, which I guess you maybe did, and what were your experience, frustrations, constraints and opportunities doing everything online?
Okay, yes, the workshop was fully online. We had at that time, back in April, still red zone restriction due to pandemics. So we originally discussed whether it would have been online or live, but then there was no option when we started. So it was full online, and we decided to split the workshop in 5 sessions along 2 weeks. Because basically the participant couldn't really put in their agenda and they scheduled an intensive workshop in 2 days. And at the beginning, of course, I was quite concerned about the possible outcomes, but luckily I can say now that the workshop was extremely successful. I found a great commitment. I wouldn't say from all the 17 municipalities, but let's say probably 80%, 90% of them really work hard in the sessions and in between sessions as well, especially in the original, in the first step when they were proposing ideas, diagrams of project and policies. We didn't use, the expertise developed in the previous experience back in the last years basically was really put in value in terms of experience in coordination, actually. the evaluation maps and all the settings for the workshop were redone and adapted to the specific context. The study area is the same, but the objectives and the political settings were totally different. So we had to, first of all, to comply with a main strategic plan. This workshop was within a 2 years process of the strategic plan, and so we didn't develop evaluation map with the usual kind of neutral approach, but we have to comply and to consider the strategic agenda that was already adopted. Other than that, basically, there was a question about how the participant perform in terms of technical capability to develop the project ideas. Actually, they were very qualified. We had about 35 or 40 individuals, and for most of the municipality, we have both an administrator, let's say the mayor or a councillor, and a technical staff member. So basically, the technical people perform very well in developing, even with a very unexpected detail, their ideas. Where politicians were participating only, you could see, for example, for the detail of the diagrams they draw, but in terms of knowing what the project were, in terms of budget, they were very, very capable. And I must say that I was amazed on the work they do. In the past, we work with young students sometimes, some other times with young researchers, but we never achieved such a good final product in terms of design. And if I can make a reference to the keynote from Peter today, I was also surprised that many of the municipalities introduced system innovation, which I didn't mention at all at the beginning, because I was focusing mostly in the requirement of the strategic plan. And the biggest success eventually is that the municipality were enabled really to make their voice heard. And this is something that they didn't take for granted at the beginning. So they work very hard. And from my side as a coordinator, I push as much as I could to have all the result of their work taken into account. And actually it is, and all their work is going will become input of the final decision. So from this perspective, I think it was also very successful. And what else? There was a question about how to group the municipality. We had a discussion with the Metropolitan Authority at the beginning. Of course, for the Metropolitan Authority, all the workflow was something new, the methodology, everything. So at the beginning, they actually took some time to understand why I proposed to group the municipality as local groups. And from the political perspective, from their side, originally, I don't know, they didn't like this solution very much, but then I insisted basically, and it worked very, very, very well. And of course, during the 2 weeks, I plan a workflow before the workshop, but then, of course, I had to readapt depending on how the process unfold. And eventually, I think, thanks to the commitment of the participant, basically, it was a great success.
Okay, did you?
I hope I answer all the
I think so. I just wondered, Brian also asked an interesting question, which is, I'm not sure if you covered that one. What were the biggest surprises or best ideas that you got from non-planners, let's say the non-experts?
Yes, a few of them were, and especially where there is an area in the northwest where there were 3 medium-sized municipalities, and in their case, both the mayor and the technical staff participated, and they developed extremely detailed and well-refined mix of green infrastructure, water infrastructure, and soft mobility all together along a main river. And that project alone, I think, is very sophisticated, and I like it very, very, very much. And that was surprising, much higher level than what we usually get that I got in previous workshop.
Okay, right. Thank you. We can always come back to that once we've gone through the next set of questions. So, Mariana, if we pick up the questions that you've got in the chat so far. So, Brian asked about the visual comparisons of the models and whether or not seeing those comparisons affected the participants. So, I found this, when I've been doing my geodesign projects, that you do the things that visually that people see, does that affect the subsequent negotiations?
I think I shown in the presentation, hello all of you. I think I showed in the presentation the process that every group went through during the negotiation. Because in the beginning there was a huge difference inside of every group. It wasn't just a difference between the groups. When they started, they had differences inside of each and every group, but till they finished every group, they were single-minded, I think, in the end. So when they went to a negotiation, the last negotiation between all the four groups, they were really agreed much more than usual, I have to say, because in normal we fight a lot. Really a lot about main things, the difference of about the targets, how much more green spaces you should give, whether you should more spaces or more green spaces or more infrastructure. A lot of those questions were actually resolved much before, a long time before they went to a final negotiation. So I think it was very interesting, the process itself, because it's not usual for us.
So I suppose that follows on nicely to the next question, again from Brian, that your population growth seemed quite dramatic in those aerial images, but how important is kind of conservation and improvement of open space? It said, how was that traded off in terms of the demand for population growth and demand for housing against the need for having open space and green space?
Okay, so it has to do with targets. So I have to explain my impact on the targets. Maybe this is the question, because that's what I do. I calculate in my daily life, it's my profession, I calculate the standard for public spaces, for infrastructure, for public institutions, and for open spaces. Now we have a new manual in Israel, which gives us difference between new neighborhoods and old existing neighborhoods in regeneration. Because if you have a new neighborhood, you have to give 10 meters per person open spaces. So it's 5 meters close open space, another 2 meters in the neighborhood around, and another 3 meters in all the city. So at the end, you have to get to 10 meters per person. Now, if you have an old neighborhood like here, you have 2 existing neighborhoods. So this is a regeneration process. You really have to give 3 meters per person. And they can even say that it might be even less. So when I calculated the targets, I gave 3 meters per person. Now, if you see the brown spaces here, the brown spaces are mixed-use housing. In mixed-use housing, due to a change in law in Israel, you can actually do green spaces together with parking. When parking are below, you have buildings, and you have between those 2 high buildings, you have open spaces. So actually, they had this under the consideration when they calculated it, and they had the discussion about it, whether it can use those spaces or not.
Okay, that would seem to lend itself to sort of parametric design then, that you could quickly run through different scenarios based on different development strategies.
Exactly.
Now, we do have a question from Alan Shearer that he's saying we may want to discuss this offline. Now, what I'm going to do, Alan, I think I will save that for the last 5 minutes, because we've got just over 10 minutes still to go. So I just wondered if we open it. Are there any other questions from anyone from the floor or the virtual floor?
I think I have one question earlier in the chat box. It's from Luatina, asking about how to implement the project.
Yes, sorry, yes, I missed.
No problem at all. Yeah, so I think I want to answer the reply this question. That's like what I say, this project is get a lot of attention by the local government. So actually they are willing to increase the green connectivity in the city of Taoyuan. So for the implementation, I think this project is very interesting to work with the project of page by planting. And actually this is the presidential hackathon project, winning project. So the project can have some political guidance to various government departments. So once the potential spots of tree planting has been identified, the government can follow up with the actions, and depends on the departments. So such as the public participation, or work with the various departments, or even the business donation. So I think for the implementation, I think it's good process to work from top down, from the framework, and also work from the bottom up project. So as I know from the, I think from maybe till the end of the year, the city of government will make an online map and to showing all the public lands, and it's possible to plant trees. So all the enterprise, or the NGOs, or even the citizens, if they want to plant trees, then they can select, they can choose the potential sites on the map. And so I think the project is doing a demonstration from both ends. So I think we are trying to showing the geodesign process, and from the framework to the implementation.
Yeah, good. Michaela, I think you're saying you've got 2 quick answers to your additional question.
Yeah, I would like to answer to Tim, who asked whether it is better live or online, and what I will do in the future. I think it depends from the context. Both ways may be very effective and works very well. And so what I think is the key factor is to make a lot of practice as much as we can. Maybe teaching first is the easiest way, because when you work with stakeholders, of course, all the dynamics can be a little bit more complicated. And second question was, the results are going to be implemented? Yes, not directly as a final design, but all the priorities and projects that were identified in the final design, where we kind of spread in different strategies within the final strategic plan. So the answer is mostly yes. And Rosanna also is asking the question about if the municipality were represented. I would say yes, because all the participants in a way propose some kind of ideas that they already developed beside the workshop. They didn't arrive without previous knowledge. Of course, they have a process ongoing in the local administration. So basically, the workshop was useful in order to coordinate the many local ideas all together in a final coordinated synergic design. Some of the municipality mentioned the fact that they would have liked to discuss in the council locally what they proposed, but eventually there was no time to do that. And seeing within the broader strategic planning process, the important thing I believe is that all the municipality could express their voice, and this was not something that was necessarily granted at the beginning of the overall process.
Okay, thank you. So I think we'll try and address Alan's question, and then we've got about 8 minutes left, and then we'll finish off with, I think Carl wants to make a couple of comments. Do you want to make your comments at the end, Carl, or do you want to make those now?
Whenever you want, I can do it now.
Right. So Alan is basically, well, Alan, do you want to articulate your question? You might be able to speak it better than sometimes maybe it's best if you mention this.
Sure, I'll try. And there's a issue of sometimes design leads, sometimes design follows. There's a back and forth, and it gets to a question of plasticity of the context you're working in. And so Tom pointed out that we've got requests for policy changes in these proposals. So my question is, okay, policies get spatialized when they put into practice. Are the requests in these proposals simply better spatializing the existing known articulated public policies, or are they new intents that policymakers never thought needed to be done before? The first is a nudging, an improvement of a policy. The second is a whole new way to think about the world. I'm in favor of both of those, but when you get to Tom's point about actually changing your world, how much can you push the policymakers to give you either the variance or the whole new way of thinking?
Yeah, and I guess there's an important scale issue here as well, that certainly in those of us who are in countries where central government makes a lot of policy decisions that are not spatial but have spatial implications, as soon as you take that from a GIS design kind of perspective and you spatialize that, suddenly it has all kinds of consequences that maybe weren't thought through when you're just having it as a written kind of policy. I mean, for me, that's fascinating area of research there. I mean, does anyone else from what Alan just said then want to respond in any way before we hand over for Carl to say a few things at the end?
I would like to.
Ariana, go on.
Yes, well, I'm an urban planner. I work in the municipality. Maybe if I was just a student, I wouldn't think of changing the world, I guess, or at least now. But since we are talking about life projects for me, because Talpiot Anon and Talpiot Mizrach, they're life projects. They're not something that I just do for the university. I just use the situation that I was in to check those plans. But actually, for me, they're live. So we actually did those talks in the municipality. When we started the research, they were talking about 3,000 dwellings. And since we were talking, we understood that we have much more, and the targets have changed. So people started thinking about what is this going to do to these spaces. We weren't talking before about water infrastructure, since we don't have a river. So then they started talking, what is this going to do if everything underground is going to be parking? So where will this water will go? They started talking about energy infrastructure that before this, we didn't talk. Now, I didn't put in the presentation the impact plans, but I actually dealt a lot about it after the presentation, and we talked a lot about it. We changed the way we talk about open spaces and about institutions, because we saw that we don't have enough space for institutions. We made a huge difference between little and big, small and big institutions, big as schools, and small we put inside of mixed use. So it actually changed a lot the way that we thought in this workshop. So thank you very much for the opportunity.
I thought we had until 40 minutes past the hour, but I've just seen a thing flash up saying we've got less than 2 minutes. So Carl, over to you.
I saw that too. Look, we've learned a lot in 3 years or more. Having several short sessions of 3 to 4 hours, at least 1 to 2 days apart, and taking pieces in each one is a very good idea, especially with officials who have other jobs. Number 2, use the history of the design. Michaela showed a 15 maps or 16 maps from the very first to the very last. And at the end of the workshop or at the end of a project, always ask the people, has the design gotten better through each stage? They will almost always say yes. And they'll go away happy. Ask them at the end, has it gotten better and better and better from where we started? And then show them the first design, show them the last design. And they'll go away, oh, that was really both interesting, but we actually got a better plan out of it, a better design. That's been our experience over the past couple of years, when Michaela and I have taught many workshops using his project. And always, no matter where we are, it gets better and better and better through the process and through negotiation.
Thank you very much, Carl.
Very good.
Thank you,
good project,
to everyone. I think according to this now, we're going to be kicked out in 15 seconds. So I will see you back in the main room.